awesome AP World history students. Today we are going to look at some primary documents for your primary doc assignment. So what you need to do is go in your notebook, go to Unit 2, and scroll down to your primary documents of Unit 2. The first one we have is this one. And what you are looking at with these primary documents is what is the main idea, what is the historical context, intended audience, purpose, and point of view. Primary documents on a document-based question, so a DBQ essay when we start writing them. We have not written one yet, but we're getting you ready for that process. You have to source documents. There are 4 ways to source the document: historical context, intended audience, purpose, and point of view. I've added this over here to the side. I would suggest that you pause this video and get this typed down into your notebook, and you can put this beside any of the documents that you do. These are key questions that you ask yourself about each one of the sourcing options. For example, we have historical context. What is happening at the time of the document that was written, and how does that affect the writing of the document? What's really important about this is that you not only answer the first part, but that you also answer the second part of the question, because you will not get the points on the DBQ if you only say what's happening at the time of the document. You have to say how it relates to the document or why it affects the document in some way. The second form of sourcing is intended audience. Who is the intended audience, and how does that affect how the document is written? Once again, that second question is super important to answer. Purpose. What is the purpose of the document, and how does it affect how it is written? Once again, make sure you get that second part. And the last one is point of view. Who is the author? What does the author believe, and why does the author believe that? We'll talk about that one more in depth when we get to that step. Our first document that we're looking at here is called Lessons for Women by Ban Zhao. This is from the late 1st century CE. Ban Zhao is a Chinese historian. That's important to note about her. And sometimes in a DBQ, it might say that. It might give you information about the person. Let's look at this document and see if we can figure out the main idea. The way of husband and wife is intimately connected with yin and yang, and relates the individual to gods and ancestors. Truly, it is the great principle of heaven and earth, and the great basis of human relationships. If a husband be unworthy, then he possesses nothing by which to control his wife. If a wife be unworthy, then she possesses nothing with which to serve her husband. If a husband does not control his wife, then the rules of conduct manifesting his authority are abandoned and broken. If a wife does not serve her husband, then the proper relationship between men and women and the natural order of things are neglected and destroyed. As a matter of fact, the purpose of these two is the same. Break it down and try to figure out what it's saying. In this first part, it talks about the balance between husband and wife, being connected to yin and yang, being connected to yin and yang, and relates to the individuals to gods and ancestors. It's this great principle she's talking about, and also the basis of human relationship. So we know that what they're talking about, or what she is talking about here, is that husband and wife have to be connected. It has to be this balance. And then in the next paragraph, it talks about how that happens. So if the husband does not control his wife, then rules of conduct are not there, they're broken. So the wife must respect the husband. The wife must serve her husband, because that's the proper relationship between man and woman, and the natural order of things, which is what she says right here. And if this doesn't happen, then natural order things will be neglected. So something about your main idea could be that this is about the relationship and balance between husband and wife. If I'm going too fast, just pause the video so that you can get all this down. The next part is the historical context. So what's going on during this time? Ask yourself these questions. What is happening during the time that the document is written, and how does this affect the writing of the document? Think about Confucian principles. We know that those governed early China. Also, the yin and the yang, that's important as well. The yin and yang is a concept of dualism from ancient Chinese philosophy. It describes how opposites can be complementary to each other. So she's talking about how husband and wife are opposite, but they complement each other as long as there's that balance. How does that context affect the writing of the document? So, historical context, the author is writing at a time when philosophy governs China. This is apparent by how she writes about yin and yang and the balance and order of life. You could also talk about Confucian and relationships, but because she says yin and yang, it directly mostly connects with that a little bit more than Confucianism. To answer that next question about how it affects the document, you could say something about how, because this is the philosophy at the time, she is disseminating this information as a historian to the people of China. That answers that second part. Now, if we're talking about audience, who is her audience? Well, she's a historian, so her intended audience would be the people of China, and also, here's the title, Lesson for Women. So we know that this is written to teach women, right? So I would say intended audience are women. How does that affect the writing of the document? She's being very clear about what the role of women is. I mean, there's no question that you know that a woman is supposed to serve her husband. If this were to a man, maybe it would be a little bit different. Maybe the wording would be a little bit different. But we can clearly see that this is to a woman and that she's trying to get across what a wife should be. Also, it's kind of a little bit persuasive. She says here, if a wife be unworthy, then she possesses nothing with which to serve her husband. And if these things aren't balanced, then the natural order will be neglected and destroyed. You could also say she is very persuasive in how she feels women should act in the way that she words things. That tells you a little bit of how the intended audience affects her language. Purpose. What is the purpose of the document, and how does that affect how it's written? Purpose is very similar to audience in this case because the purpose is to tell women how to behave to their husbands. And she's doing this because of her beliefs and for the simple fact that she wants women to know how to act. So for this one, I would just say this is very similar to intended audience. So I would say this is very similar to intended audience. She is trying to persuade women on how they should act. If on a DBQ you have a document like this, you have the choice of how you're going to source it. You wouldn't get points for saying this again. So if you would source this document on a DBQ, I would just use these two and skip over purpose and not even use purpose at all since it's very similar. Point of view, who is the author? What does the author believe, and why does the author believe that? So we know that the author is Van Zhao. She is a Chinese historian. She is a woman. What does the author believe? She believes that women should be servants to their husband, that they should honor their husband, that that's a natural, proper relationship. Why does the author believe that? The why part is often outside of the document. What do you know about her as to why she would believe it? Well, she talks about yin and yang, and she talks about this like philosophy. So we know she was probably raised with that philosophy. We know she's Chinese. We know that despite the fact that she's a woman, she agrees with this. So from her point of view, she's coming through and she's saying that she believes this most likely because she is a believer in that Chinese philosophy. So how you would write point of view is you would say the author is Van Zhao, and you would say she is a Chinese historian. She believes that women should respect and serve their husbands. And this is often where students stop. You can't stop there. That's not the full point of view. You have to go on and say why she believes this. So that part is she believes this because she was raised in the Chinese philosophy to believe that this is a This is a woman's role in society. Now, would it be possible for her to be a woman and disagree with this? Absolutely. In that case, if she would disagree with it, then her point of view would be different. If this were a man, his point of view is coming from a man, so he might believe it because he's a man and he wants to be served. Point of view is always about the person, but it's oftentimes not talked about in the document. You have to kind of look past the document to figure that out. For example, a point of view could be someone's religion, someone's gender, someone's socioeconomic status. If I'm rich, I'm going to have a different opinion than what a poor person would, right? Where they're from, how they're raised. There will be some documents that you will get on a DBQ that won't give you very much information. And if you don't know the specific person, point of view might be too hard to write. That's okay if you don't know. If in that case that you don't know, then you just don't do that one on your DBQ. That is sourcing a document. Now, if you go to your next document, this is the one that you're going to be doing on your own. It doesn't even have an author. That's a problem because we can't really know a lot about the author, right? Or even a lot about this document. So you're going to try your best to try to figure out what this might be about and who might have written this. Now, it does give you some historical context to go on, so that will tell you a little bit more about the author. I think I put that in there just because there wasn't a lot of information given with the document. That one's one you're doing on your own, as well as this one from Ibn Battuta. You should know who he is if you did your Ibn Battuta journal, so that's good. If you want to, what I would suggest is taking this and copy it and paste it into your other documents so you have that little cheat sheet over here and you can remember as you're writing these points. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can also reach out to me on Teams chat. Just let me know. I'm here for you. But most importantly, don't forget the last part of each one of these questions. That's what students often leave out, and that's the part that really matters in respect to these four right here. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure and do so and click those notifications so you don't miss a thing.